This winter, at 69 years old, I turned over a 3 meter by 4 patch of dirt behind my rental here in Maryborough to knock a few dollars off the grocery bill, and what came up out of that ground at 10 to 6 every morning was something no seed packet ever promised me. Before I tell you how it went, do me one quick favor, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel. It honestly keeps us in touch, and it means a lot over here. I'm Jim. I'm 69, and after 10 years here in Maryborough, I finally did the one bit of dirty work I'd been putting off since the day I landed. I picked up a shovel, not for the exercise, not for some grand plan, for one plain reason: to shave a bit off the food bill. Now, if you spent your working life back in the States, you know the feeling I'm talking about. You stand at the checkout and you watch that total climb. A bag of tomatoes here, a bunch of greens there, and somehow the little screen shows a number that makes you blink. On a fixed income, that blink turns into arithmetic. Every single run to the shop, you find yourself doing the math on a bag of tomatoes, weighing it in your hand like it owes you an explanation. That itch, that quiet, weekly sting, is exactly what put the shovel in my hand. If you've ever stood in the shop doing the math on a bag of tomatoes, you already know exactly why I picked up that shovel. Here's how it started. My neighbor Bruce, a wiry old fella 2 doors down, sun-faded akubra on his head, a blue heeler at his heel that limps on one back leg, leans over the back fence one afternoon while I'm standing there eyeing the lawn. He'd caught me looking. "Dig it now, Jim," he said. "The winter soil out here is soft, and it barely dries." That was it. That was the whole nudge. From a man who's been growing his own out here longer than I've been alive on this side of the world. So the next morning, I drove down to the co-op on Kent Street. You know, the sort of place smells of fertilizer and twine. An old dog asleep by the till. I spent $38. That's it. $38 on seed potatoes, a handful of silver beet, and a tray of tomato seedlings. Then I came home and I dug. 3 meters by 4, right where the lawn met the back fence. The blade bit into that dark, damp soil like it had been waiting for me, and Bruce was dead right, soft as cake. Now, before I go further, let me be straight with you about something. In 10 years here, the same practical questions kept landing on me. How does the visa actually work? What does the move really cost? Where do you even start? I got asked so many times that I finally sat down and wrote every honest answer out. That's the one-way guide, the ebook inside my one-way club, and it's simply every question about making this move answered plainly by someone who's actually done it and lived it a decade. I'll be honest with you, it won't dig the plot for you, and it's not for idle daydreamers. It's for folks who are seriously planning the move and want the real answers in one place instead of scrambling for advice from the wrong corners of the internet. If that's you, the link's down in the description. Right back to the dirt. That first month, Bruce's promise came true. Slow and steady. Mild days, cool nights. And greens that just kept coming. I'd go out in the early damp, kneel down in that soft soil, and there'd be new leaves where yesterday there was nothing at all. After the overnight drizzle, the whole yard smelled of eucalyptus, that clean, sharp green smell that still stops me 10 years on. I'd pull a weed here, firm a seedling there, press those little tomato plants a bit deeper into the ground with my thumbs. And stay with me on the numbers here, because on a fixed income, this is the part that actually changes what you can afford. By the 4th week, that little plot wasn't just growing, it was producing. I was cutting silver beet not once but twice. You snip it, and a week later it's back, thick as ever. The cherry tomatoes came on in a rush, and I'd walk out with my mug and pull a handful straight off the vine, still warm from the sun. And then came the quiet turning point, the one I didn't even notice at first. I stopped buying vegetables at the shop. Altogether. I'd walk right past that whole section, and I didn't need a single thing in it. That's when I got curious about the money side of it. So I sat down at the kitchen table with the calendar and a pencil, and I started tallying up what I wasn't spending anymore, week by week, line by line. And the number climbing off that little patch of dirt was bigger than I'd ever figured going in. By the 4th week, I'd stopped handing money over at the checkout entirely. And when I finally did the sum, sitting there with the calendar in front of me, the amount that little 3x4 plot was saving me every single week was a real, countable number. Not a guess. Not a rough feeling. A number. And I'm going to lay it out for you, line by line, exactly what came off that bill. $25 a week. That's the number that came off my bill once the plot took over $25. I stopped handing across the checkout every single week, and it landed the way a small pay rise lands when you're living on a fixed income. Not a windfall, not the lottery. Just a steady little bit of breathing room every 7 days that I used to hand to the shop and now I don't. Let me put that in something you can picture. $25 is less than one middling shop run out here. The small trolley, a bit of veg, the odd thing you forget you needed. That whole trip, more or less, just gone from the ledger for good. Every week. You don't notice it the first week. By the second month, you notice it plenty. Grab a pen if you're the type. This is the part worth writing down for your own planning. The first proper harvest is when it stopped being a hunch and started being a fact. One Sunday, I went out with the coffee and the good scissors and just started cutting. Silver beet, 2 big handfuls of it. Cherry tomatoes off the vine, warm from sitting under the mild sun. And the first potatoes, which I'll admit I dug up half by accident, grinning like a kid the whole time. I carried the lot inside, heaped it on the kitchen scale, and watched the needle swing round to near on 4 kilos. Near on 4 kilos in one pick. More than the two of us could eat before the next lot came on. There was a colander of greens and little red tomatoes sitting on the bench that whole week, and I still couldn't keep up. So let's do the sum, honestly, the way you do it at your own kitchen table. I put $38 into that plot to start the seed potatoes, the silver beet, the tomato seedlings, all of it from the co-op on Kent Street, one afternoon, $38, done. Now, hold that next to $25 a week coming off the bill. You don't need me to tell you where that goes. Inside a couple of months, the whole 38 had paid itself back, and then kept right on paying. The plot was covering its own cost and putting money back in my pocket on top. Plain as day. The dirt was working for me while I slept. But I promised you I'd be straight, so here's the part that isn't shiny. That very first batch of tomato seedlings, I put them in too early. Got eager, ignored the cool nights, and half of them just sulked in the ground and never took. Sat there looking sorry for themselves for 2 weeks and then gave up. That's on me, not the soil. And the mulch, a good bag of mulch cost me a fair bit more than I'd budgeted for, enough that I stood in the co-op doing the maths twice. So, no, it isn't free. Nobody's handing you groceries. It's cheap, and it rewards a bit of patience, and it'll make you look foolish once or twice before it makes you look clever. And if a fella tells you it's all effortless, he's selling you something. I'd rather you trust the number. Because the number is what holds up. Even with the seedlings I killed and the mulch that stung, even counting the losses like an honest man should, the plot came out ahead fast. That's the whole point. You get to make a couple of small mistakes and it still works, because a 3x4 patch of damp winter soil is a very forgiving thing to be wrong about. I'd go out most mornings while the arithmetic was still stacking up in my head, kneel down in that dirt I'd turned over with the shovel back in the first week, and just check on things. You could smell the eucalyptus after the overnight drizzle, that clean, sharp green smell that comes up off the ground out here when the sun starts warming the wet leaves. And I'd be crouched there pulling a weed, thinking, this bed of soft dirt is quietly saving me more than I figured. It doesn't feel like money when you're doing it. It feels like a hobby. The money part only shows up later on the calendar, when you sit down with the pencil. So let me give you the headline, the figure that matters if you write down nothing else. Across a full month, greens and tomatoes and the first potatoes and everything I stopped buying at the shop. The plot was saving me roughly $100 a month off the food bill. Roughly $100 a month. Real money, month after month. Not a one-off, not a good week I'm bragging about. On a fixed income out here, $100 a month is a power bill in the mild months. It's the difference between watching every dollar and having a little slack. It's a nice dinner out with a friend, paid for by Silverbeet. Now turn that toward your own situation for a second, because this is the bit I really want you to hear. It doesn't matter what your check is, whether it's a comfortable one or a careful one. The cost of entry here is a 3x4 patch of ground behind wherever you end up renting and $30-odd of seed and seedlings from the local co-op. That's it. That's the whole ticket. You don't need acreage. You don't need a green thumb you were born with. You don't need to have done this before. I certainly hadn't. 10 years I'd lived here and never once turned a shovel of it until this winter. And this is the kind of saving you can start the very week you land, not year 3 when you've found your feet, not once you've got it all figured out. The week you land, dig a patch, buy the seedlings, wait a little, and let the soft dirt do the rest. So the money side of this? Settled. Proven. It does exactly what I hoped it would when I first leaned on that shovel, and a bit more besides. If you came to this for the arithmetic, there it is. Laid out on the table, $38 in, roughly $100 a month back, and the mistakes already counted against it. And if that $100 a month were the whole story, I'd have told you to dig the plot and left it there. But it isn't the reason I now set an alarm for 10 to 6 that I don't need. Because every morning, before the sun is properly up, that little garden fills with something that has nothing to do with money at all. It comes in with the birds, 10 to 6. Before the sun's properly over the back fence, before the kettle's even boiled, that's when the plot I dug to save on groceries turns into something I could never put on a receipt. The kookaburras go first, a pair of them, every single morning, dropping down onto that old weathered fence post like they own it, and then they laugh. You've heard the sound, even if you've never been here, that mad, rolling cackle that starts up out of nowhere and just builds. The first time it woke me, I sat straight up in bed. Now it's the thing that starts my day. Two big birds on a fence post, throwing their heads back, laughing at nothing at all. I couldn't tell you what they find so funny out there. I've stopped asking. Then the color arrives. Rainbow lorikeets, a whole squabbling gang of them come tumbling through the grevillea bush by the fence, all racket and feathers, right over the top of my seedlings. Green and blue and orange, flashing about, hanging upside down off the branches, screeching at each other like they're having the world's loudest argument over breakfast. 10 of them in a bush the size of a garden chair. You don't watch that and think about your grocery bill. You just stand there with your mouth half open. And then there was the morning that stopped me cold. I'd come out with my coffee, still half asleep, and there, at the edge of the plot, right where the silver beet comes up, stood a wallaby, just standing there, chewing. Not spooked, not running. It lifted its head and looked at me, dead calm, like I was the one who'd wandered into the wrong yard, like I was the visitor in my own backyard. We stood there a good long minute, the two of us, the eucalyptus still damp and sharp in the air from the overnight drizzle. Then it had one more chew, turned, and bounced off over the back fence. Easy as you like. Picture that for a second. A wallaby watching you have your morning coffee in your own backyard. Tell me that's not worth getting up for. So here's what I actually do out there now, if you want the honest truth of it. I carry my coffee out at 10 to 6 to check the seedlings, see how the tomatoes are coming, whether the silver beet needs cutting. That's the excuse. That's what I tell myself I'm going out for. But I'll let you in on something. I don't really check anything anymore. I get out there, I stand in the cool with the mug warm in both hands, and I just stop. I listen. The birds, the wind coming off the water, the last of the drizzle dripping off the fence. 10 minutes go by. 15. And I haven't touched a single seedling. I'm just standing in it, letting the morning happen around me. And then one day, Bruce started wandering over. You remember Bruce, 2 doors down, the wiry old fella with the sun-faded akubra and the blue healer that limps? The one who leaned over the fence in the first place and told me to dig it now while the winter soil was soft. Well, one morning he saw me standing out there with my coffee, and the next thing I know, he's come across with his own mug. Didn't say much. Just stood alongside me, the two of us, watching the lorikeets carry on. His old dog flopped down in the damp grass between us. And that's become the thing. That quarter hour at first light, me and Bruce and the birds, 2 coffees going cold because we're too busy watching a wallaby chew. That's the best part of my whole day now. Not a big event. Nobody planned it. It just grew there, same as the tomatoes did. And I'll tell you straight, it is the one thing about this life I would have paid good money for, and I never once knew to want it. You can't order it. It's not in any brochure about moving out here. It just turns up at 10 to 6 for free. When I set out to dig that plot, I had a number in my head and nothing else. Shave a bit off the shop, simple arithmetic. That's all I was after, and I got it. The garden saves me right around $100 a month on food, plain as the bank statement, and it'll do the very same for you on a fixed income out here. That part came true exactly the way I figured. But if any part of this has you doing your own arithmetic, sitting there working out what a patch of dirt might knock off your own grocery run, then that's the whole reason I told it to you. Because I need you to hear the part the numbers miss. The money was never the surprise. The real return showed up at first light, and it didn't cost me a cent. That's the thing I didn't expect. Not the dollars I saved on tomatoes and greens the mornings, the laughing birds, the wallaby at the fence, the old man crossing over with his mug. I went looking to save a few dollars, and what I found was the best 15 minutes of every day I've got left. So here it is, the whole thing in a line. The tomatoes are a bonus, the mornings are the harvest. And here's what I want you to take away, you folks who've been sitting at the kitchen table dreaming about this. Look at what it actually cost me to get in the door. $30 odd of seed potatoes and silver beet, and a couple of tomato seedlings from the co-op down on Kent Street. A patch of dirt, 3 meters by 4, right where the lawn met the back fence. A borrowed shovel, and one cool afternoon of turning the soil over. That's it. That's the whole cost of entry. That's the price of admission to a morning you can't buy anywhere. People think a move like this is about running away from something, the long gray winters, the rush, the cost of it all back home. And sure, all that's true. I don't miss the scraping ice off the windshield one bit. But that's not really what it is. It's about the small mornings you get instead. The ones that don't show up on any receipt. The quarter hour at 10 to 6 that nobody sells and everybody can have. So if you take one thing from an old fella talking to you over the fence, take this. Don't wait for the perfect plan or the perfect year. Dig the plot. Turn over 3 meters by 4 of soft winter dirt, put your $30 of seedlings in the ground, and carry your coffee out there at first light. The savings will stack up, month after month, exactly like I told you they would. And the mornings, the kookaburras, the color, the wallaby watching you drink your coffee, and maybe, one day, a neighbor crossing over with his own mug, the mornings will find you. They found me. They'll find you too. That, more than any dollar figure, is what's waiting out here, and it is well within your reach.